the reference is a little bit of a team building tip and trick that I've noticed over the years. There's this balance of, you said commendable. Everyone, on this podcast knows what it's like to work more than what you're paid for, right? That's part of exceeding in anything that you're doing, whether it's work or you're working at a sport. Like ultimately, like whatever the standard is to be set, hopefully you have a higher standard for yourself and you're willing to go past that line because you want more. Like you're probably not going to get anywhere if you don't at some point redline that and find out what you're made of, right?
Oh, yeah.
And you mentioned 16 years. That's a long time to do that, but at the same time, might have been the perfect time to do that. But then there's this part of that starts to fade out of balance. And I kind of learned this in my own journey as far as leadership and team building, where you go, well, I'm a grinder. I just come in and I'm early and I'm the last to leave and I work the hardest and I put up numbers and that's what it takes, right? And then you see people start to model you and you can kind of get this feeling of like intuitive enough to go, whoa, be careful, man. Because if that's the only way to do this, they're watching you and saying, do they want your job? Do they want to every single day grind like that? They might not, but they may have other skills and other path that allows them to be more effective than you were at the gig. But if you present that that's the only way to do it and be successful, be careful because you don't want what you don't want. Because ultimately in team building, you want to essentially replace yourself when possible with somebody more equipped so you can go do higher level things. And you're not able to do that if you don't create a position that somebody else desires and they look at and they want. So I'm just so blown away.
That was probably what the problem in that industry was, because that's proven just to be the hardest worker in the room, work the longest hours.
And so
to your point, that totally makes sense.
Yep.
That's the culture that's built in the restaurant.
We learned from a team building. That's such a good point, man. It's a great thought. I didn't think about that as far as who are you modeling, and then you go, well, man, I don't want to do that. Right. We always learned
I'm not willing to pay that price.
To build a successful business where you are growing a team, right? There's a lot of business where maybe you don't have to grow a team, but this is not Silicon Valley. It requires a belly to a belly, a person to a person, right? A successful business is going to take a lot of people cohesively working together. That's 99% of businesses. But we always learned from team building is about duplication, right? Don't do what works, do what duplicates. And that's what Taylor's talking about, is replacing yourself, right? And we always had this filter that we would ask. It says, is someone going to ask themselves, can I do what they're doing? Do I want to do what they're doing? And do I have time to do what they're doing? If any of those three are off, they're not going to do it, right? Like, so what a profound difference of like being like, okay, well, I've got to get into a position where the more successful I become, the more autonomy I have. The more successful I become, the more I get to spend with my family. The more successful I become, the easier it gets, not the latter. Because if it's the latter, the person goes, well, what am I working so hard for here? Yep. And the only answer to that question is money in that scenario. And at some point, as we evolve as human beings and get down this career race, at some point, that just becomes one ticker in the equation. Mm-hmm. I think my younger self, maybe not, but I think that for the majority of people, that's the only thing that's kind of in your mind's eye, Mm-hmm. And then, kind of as you round out the edges, you go, okay, cool. Like I'm actually have some marketable skills. Like I'm not worried about starving. Like I'm going to be okay with whatever I do. Now, what does the whole picture look like? I just think that's a cool perspective of like, be careful who you're modeling. And then also for the people that know that people are modeling them, which is a lot of people that are listening to this podcast, make sure that they can answer yes to all three of those questions. Because if they can't answer yes to those three questions, they're probably going to look for a new career, or they're going to look for a new mentor, or they're going to look for someone else to model, because essentially, just like you said, Emmer, love you, I have a lot of respect for you, but I don't want your job.